It's a very common view that Assetto Corsa is a superior driving experience over project cars. Pretty much anyone you ask will tell you this, but if you ask them to explain why, then not many will be able to go beyond blurry explanations like it feels better or the handling is more realistic. There's a saying going like this: if you can't explain something clearly, you don't understand it yourself. So the point of this video is to go deep and understand the details that make the difference. I am not going to throw bait or be mysterious. The first thing I'll say is, all these people are right. There are many things Assetto Corsa does better. I would like to treat each of these things in detail, so I'll split this video in two parts. In this one, we'll talk about the differences in the braking feel between both games, and about how temperature affects tire grip and durability in each game too. We'll start talking about the brakes. The biggest difference in terms of braking between both games is the way you do the initial brake input. In equal cars and conditions, project cars will always allow you to jump way harder on the pedal at first, and also to stay on full braking for longer as the speed comes down. In a high-performance single-seater, you should be able to jump on the pedal if you are traveling fast without any trouble. That technique works in cars down the ladder in project cars. Cars with lower downforce levels still allow you to stomp the brake with no consequences at all. It feels as if the brakes were way too weak for the amount of grip the tires have. It's really hard to lock up hard enough for it to become a problem. Let's see half a lap of onboard driving in project cars with the telemetry visible. If we slow it down, you can easily see what I meant. Even in a GT car, the game allows you to go straight to full braking. You will get away with this kind of driving even in braking zones where the speed isn't high. If we switch to the same car in Assetto Corsa, the game wants you to do something completely different. GT cars are still grippy and generate decent downforce, but they are not single-seaters or prototypes. You are not supposed to stomp on the brakes, and in this game it works better being a bit smoother on them. Until the last update, this game didn't even have a HUD element to check your pedal inputs, so what I did to show the difference visually is to drive in project cars the same way I would drive in Assetto Corsa. As a side benefit, I get to use the same heads-up display, so it doesn't skew the comparison. So let's go back to the Bugatti circuit, and now I'll treat the brakes the way I do when playing Assetto Corsa. It doesn't hurt doing it this way in project cars either, but you are wasting stopping power you could use. Now, for those thinking this has something to do with ABS, it doesn't. If we go to a car that doesn't have it and has even less downforce, we still get away with going straight to full braking. The fastest way in project cars with almost every car is to brake the way Formula 1 drivers do. This is another area where Assetto has a huge advantage. We'll go through many different details here, from how overheating affects the tires to how fast the flash heating is in both games, so let's go step by step. First, we'll talk about cold tires. In Project Cars, all compounds are like driving on ice until they get up to temperature. This effect is probably a bit overdone, especially on sport tires for road cars. This should be decent straight away even without blankets. Now we will go on board to see how a typical outlap looks like in Project Cars. The grip levels are really low, but the most strange thing is that the ride feels exactly the same as when they are fully up to temperature, even if the pressures are still far lower. A tire is one more element of the suspension, so if it's very low on pressure, it should show on the way the car rides. It should feel like a car with a soft suspension, and the ride height should be lower too. In some race cars, if the ride height is optimized, bottoming down can be a problem on very cold tires. Nothing of that can be felt in this game. The grip levels are way lower for a good while, and that's it. Assetto Corsa allows you to push just a bit harder out of the pits, especially on road compounds. The grip levels are still lower than the ones you'll have later, but the low pressures are far more evident through the force feedback. The car feels floaty, sluggish and generally too soft. If you are driving a car that is set up to be very low, you'll bottom down more often and in more places. Assetto has better flash heating too. Let's cause a huge front lockup in Project Cars and we'll keep an eye on the temperature on the front left tire, the one that will take more punishment. The hottest part gained 7 degrees in that massive lockup, from 111 to 118. Now let's do something similar in Assetto Corsa. This time we'll keep an eye on the front right tire. It went from 70 to 114 degrees. It gained 44 this time. And as we get rolling, we see the HUD blinking like crazy between green and red. As the flat spot touches the tarmac, it gets red for a fraction. And as we can see, the rest of the surface hasn't been overheated. But not only it's much easier to overheat a tire in Assetto Corsa, overheating also has a much bigger effect. We go back to Project Cars, in the heat of July in Dubai, and driving around a track that is very demanding for the left tires. The soft compound will overheat. You can see it is way off its ideal temperature, at 130 degrees down the straights, hitting peaks of 140 in the fastest section. Even like this, the grip levels are pretty much normal. You can barely feel anything, and it pays off to carry the soft tires around. If you switch to a harder compound that stays in a reasonable temperature, you'll just get slower lap times, even if the soft is boiling. The durability isn't affected too much either, and the softs can still make a full fuel tank before getting slower than mediums or hards. This situation repeats across many different classes and makes any other tire than the softest of the range completely pointless. With an exception or two, there's not any sort of a strategy needed in this game. You just pick the softest compound, run it for a full fuel tank, and then take another set of the same tire. The wear isn't very realistic either. The performance of the tire stays almost flat until it drops several seconds from one lap to another. In Assetto Corsa, the situation is very different. Let's overheat a set of soft tires. It won't take long in this game. Now let's see what happens if I try to drive these overheated tires at racing speeds. As you can see, it is just not possible. The rears are completely melted and have zero grip. Even when the fronts are still cold, the oversteer is just insane. In Assetto Corsa, locking up or lighting up the rears too often will hurt your pace badly, and your driving has a huge impact on what happens with the rubber. More to come in the next video. As always, thanks for watching.